Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. So this is the first of series of conversation with Keka. I'm going to be exploring some interesting area with a friend. So my conversation with this particular person, Freeman, tend to be philosophical. So, as much as we're going to get practical advices and some things he has done in his journey as a fatherhood, some of the conversations might tend also towards the philosophical aspect because that is where kind of like most of the understanding comes from that you translate to your general life, like you apply them. So this is going to be an interesting one. So welcome to the podcast, Freeman.
Welcome, Keka. Should I call you Keka or by some other name?
Whichever you want. Uh,
Okay.
it's just me and you talking like we talk almost every day.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Sure, sure.
so
All right. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. It's a bit of a nervous experience, being that I'm the first person you decided to invite to your very first episode. So yeah,
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. Let's pretend it's not a podcast and let's just have a conversation. So
great.
what's on your mind today?
I okay for one. I'm a little from my voice. You could tell I'm a little bit nervous because this is this is the first recorded session, and I want it to go great because I feel this series of conversations that will be happening. Like if there's anybody that is really interested, it's something that will help them because it's hearing from people that are doing it and having like a honest, sincere conversation about it, and that is not what a lot of people get out there. So when you ask people about their story, they tend to paint the rosy pictures or tell you all is good or trying to portray the perfect examples of family and all that. But having people that are willing to come on board, talk about it from an honest perspective, the challenges they face and how difficult and some of the things you could learn. So yeah, I hope it's something that a lot of people will like, so we could continue doing this. But like it's good to have you as the first person because like you and I will have very interesting conversations offline. So this should set the pace for the conversation down the line. So a little bit of an introduction. So I'd like you to take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself real quick to the people out there.
Is there enough about me to be introduced in a couple of minutes? More like more like a couple of seconds.
Okay.
So yeah, you've told everyone my name, Freeman, and yeah, biologically, I became a dad. It's about 2 years now. Um, so yeah, it's about 2 years. In about 9 days' time, my daughter will be exactly 2 years old. So
Oh, nice. I
yeah,
remember I remember when she was born. It feels like yesterday.
yeah. So it has been an interesting journey so far. Um, yeah, based for the context of the conversation, I think you can call me a 2-year-old dad. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think for the initial audience, like the people that will be listening to this podcast, they will be within that range, either from a 0 to like a 2 to 3 year old dad, because I like most people in my circle, they are like within that that bracket. So some of the things
Oh,
that you'll be talking about, some of the lessons you'll be sharing, I think it will be very much helpful to them.
okay,
So
that puts a lot of expectation on me because you're assuming that I know so much to share. I think that this journey is an ongoing journey. You learn as you go, you discover things as you go, and it's not a journey you would ever come to an end. You would always be on the journey. So yeah, let's talk.
okay. So as part of a conversation, so like I start with the first question. Like for me, I'd like to know what does fatherhood mean
So what it means.
you?
Yeah. To me, I think there is a whole lot to it. There is a biological aspect, which obviously means that you have some progeny, and Um, that's about it for the biological aspect. Or maybe not, because mm, the whole instinct behind bringing forth offspring is about genetic survival, right?
Yeah.
So it, 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 it's a good thing to know that you've created, your genes have passed on to the next generation, and you hope that your genes would continue for as many generations as humanity will be on this planet. So yeah, that's a it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to experience. Then on the emotional side, fatherhood, yeah, you can say it's fulfilling. It's fulfilling because there's this happiness you get when you see your child um, born and grow right before your eyes, start taking steps. Generally, you know, um, transitioning from that bundle that comes out of a woman into a human being. It's a fascinating experience, basically. I'm not sure if that has captured exactly what you are expecting regarding the meaning of fatherhood. But then I think it's an ongoing conversation, so we are going to go round and round such concepts.
Oh yeah.
Um, mm,
Yeah, yeah, so
it's
we'll just talk about
it's a
I
job, right? It's a
sorry?
job that I said it's a job
Yeah,
that you hope to perform to the best of your ability, right?
yeah,
And it's a job that you hope to perform to the expectations of society as well. So the standard of measurement is not just your own standard. You hope to do right by your own standards, obviously. You hope to do right by the society's expectation of a responsible father. You also hope to do right by your child as well. I mean, initially, the child cannot, the child can express some expectations, like you have to be there to take care of the child, right?
yeah,
Eventually, they are going to grow up and they would have the nature of their expectations would evolve as well. And you are also expected to evolve accordingly. So, and those expectations can come in many ways, spiritual development, emotional, intellectual, health and safety. There's a lot that comes with the journey, a whole lot.
yeah. Like you said a lot that we're going to unpack down the line because the conversation will be like a self-evolving conversation. So I tried not to script any of the conversation,
Yeah.
it to kind of like open itself up and lead to wherever it leads to. And I'm thinking by the time we're done, we'll get the most out of it. So I think the next question on my mind is there a marked difference from when you were, say, married to when you had a child? Like, is there a mental shift? Is there a difference in perspective that comes with being responsible for another life?
Yes, yes, I would say there's a difference in a lot of things. Some of the differences you don't even know that you're consciously uh, that there is a difference. You don't know that there is a it's not a conscious effort to make the change, but sometimes I think some of the changes are conscious as well. I think one of the very first things that comes to my mind, and maybe any other parent there, people have different experiences. But for me, the immediate impact of having a child is that instantly you know that you are responsible for another human being in a way that you've never been before. So
Mm,
this is it. Now I had the first son in my family. I have younger ones, and at a point I was responsible for taking care of them to an extent, but there was no sense of ultimate responsibility,
mm,
right? Ultimate responsibility for a lot of things. But in this case, with a child of your own, there's that sense of ultimate responsibility. You are totally responsible for the child's safety, totally, because safety is quite important in the earliest stages. where the child is basically, I think there is a discussion as to when the child starts becoming a real person, because initially it's just a human being that wants to eat and sleep, and that's it.
Okay.
You understand? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no sense of navigating the world except to find the right nipple or the right feeding bottle. Right? They just
Yeah.
care about that feed and sleep. But then I think you get the sense that they are paying a lot of attention to what goes on around them. It's a new environment for them, new experiences, new sounds. I know that when they are inside the womb, they hear
Okay.
sounds, but those sounds are mostly muffled. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. They can hear sounds, but when they come out, the sounds are completely different. Everything is louder. I can imagine everything is too bright, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, they pay a lot of attention to the environment, but there is a limited sense of safety. They don't know exactly what is safe and what isn't, especially when they start moving around, touching things. The instinct to put things in their mouth, you have to be alert to that instinct to be sure that you help them navigate the world properly, teach them what is not good for eating and what is good for eating, things like that. There is that sudden awareness. But secondly, another um, immediate thing that happens when the child comes is that you know instantly that your sleep time is going to be drastically reduced.
Oh yeah.
More on the side of the mom. But yeah, the dads are also not completely insulated from the sleeplessness that comes. You know,
All right.
yeah. So that's one major impact. I mean, I can go on and on about all these subtle changes that you have to make, subtle adjustments. For me, I would say that there was no point where there was a specific thing that I was unaware of, and then when the child came, I suddenly had to turn on a switch and start being aware of. You understand? I
Yeah.
think it was more of it was just a transition for me. In terms of safety, I consider myself pretty safety conscious, pretty
Yeah.
health conscious. So for myself and for people around me, so my sight, I think I'm short-sighted, right?
Yeah.
If I have to see something from afar, I use glasses when I drive. But then and if I want to see, if I sit too far from a television screen, I have to use my glasses to see the sharp images. But for some reason, if there is a pin somewhere, I'm going to see it.
Oh, I
You
see.
understand?
Yeah.
Exactly. A pin, because I understand with a child around, I understand how quickly that situation can go
Escal-
south. Exactly. The child can pick it up. It looks nice. It's shiny. Put it in their mouth, and they can't even tell you that there's a pin in their mouth
Yeah.
or that they've swallowed a pin. And the pin can be in their system for days. You would not be aware until they start having a fever and so on. You don't know what to tackle. Yeah, it's a bit scary. But then, if you have that natural, so that is it natural? If you've developed a sense of risk over time, then you can easily get um, into the mood for you know protecting your child, basically.
Yeah. I get you. Like most of the question I'll be asking, I think they're mostly from my personal perspective because I feel I'm at that point where it's an inevitability for me because it's something I really want to do. I want to be a dad. And in the next couple of years I might get there. So I want to I think for me I'm trying to understand if there's a if how do I put it, like if at any point even before you became a dad, like you went through that process of actually thinking through the situation and trying to set yourself up so that when you become a dad, like it's easier. I know no amount of pressure will really make you ready in terms of the emotional the emotional responsibility because it's a whole new different phase. Like if you haven't experienced it, you won't be able to adequately prepare for it. But I still want to ask, like, did you at any point in time before either you got married or before you had your first child, like, did you at any point in time say actively prepare yourself in terms of what you did, what you ate, how you lived your life, such that when you had a child, it's easier to kind of
Okay,
support the
okay,
child?
okay. Um, I think that the whole concept of parenting is it starts earlier than most people realize. Most people think that it's when you have a child that you become a parent. But then people are right now parenting themselves. I mean, parenting generally, even though they do not have children yet, you are parenting by the choices you're making right now. If
Yeah,
you, I know you to be someone who goes to the gym fairly regularly. It requires discipline, right? And it
yeah,
requires a vision for long-term benefits as a consequence of short-term discomfort. Yeah.
yeah,
So if even pre having a child, you know, built the discipline to read books. I know you read a lot. To consume podcasts. I know you're a Joe Rogan fan, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein. That I know that you're already into consumption of long form intellectual content, right? It
yeah,
takes a lot of discipline, curiosity, and yeah, discipline and curiosity to keep it up over an extended period. So I would say that to a large extent, you're already parenting by parenting yourself. You
mm,
cannot parent somebody else if you cannot effectively parent yourself. That's why they say the parent is the best example for the child. Now, I would not say there was ever a point in my life where I decided I am about to have children or I hope to have children someday. Therefore, I need to live this way. You understand?
yeah,
Every step I've taken in terms of developing myself and so on has been because I think it's a good thing to do, not because it's something I am hoping I'll teach somebody else someday. But that in itself is parenting.
mm,
I am making choices about what I eat. Yeah, because I don't consume junk. I do my best to avoid junk as much as possible. So I would say for more than 15 years now, I've been a very clean eater. And
wow,
then, yeah, yeah, more than 15 years. I my what I drink, all my I'm exclusively uh, limited to drinking water. Of course, once in a while, take a soft drink, one bottle. I would say on the average, maybe a bottle of soft drink per year if I get
wow,
exposed, or even say uh, alcoholic drinks. Yeah, I test beer from time to time, but on the average, it might be once per year as well, one bottle a year. So
wow,
that's a conscious choice I made because I call these things poisons, and we can go into a lot of all of the reasons why they can reasonably be called poisons, but that's a
mm,
discussion
for-
for another day. But yes, I see them as poisons, as slow poisons, and I choose to stay away from them. And then I hope to transfer that to my children as well. I hope to transfer that to my children as well. So, um, because I've parented myself a certain way, I would at least lay the framework for understanding why these things might be harmful to you. Initially, when the child is very young, they might not really understand the concept. So you have to be a bit authoritarian in how you achieve the aim of keeping the child healthy with respect to consumption of these things that are not very healthy for you. However, when the child's capacity for understanding develops sufficiently to understand the concept of why this thing is sweet now, but it can cause you more harm down the line, when you can explain that for the child to understand, then you can disengage from the authoritarian strategy for transferring the knowledge and move to a more conversational approach, a more philosophical approach, where the child himself or herself will be able to articulate why they think it's a good choice to avoid coke. I saw um, there was this thing about this during the Euros 2020
Yeah.
where Ronaldo
Yeah, I
pushed
saw
aside
that. Yeah, I saw that
of
clip.
coke. Yeah, he pushed aside a bottle of coke and told recommended water to everybody. After that, I saw someone. I think it was a video recorded at his house where somebody offered his child a coke or something like that. No, a chocolate.
Yeah.
And then the child, speaking Portuguese, said, "Daddy said we shouldn't take chocolate. No chocolate. No chocolate." So at that point, I'm not sure Ronaldo has been able to actually conversationally communicate that chocolate might not be the best thing for the child. It's a bit more
Authoritarian.
more authoritarian. But down the line, I'm sure the child will understand. At the point where the child understands, then it's up to the child to make the choice whether to go this way or that way. But you, as a parent, you you can only take the child to a certain point, and then at that point you disengage. And well, you would never fully disengage, but at least you
Like,
backpedal a
yeah,
bit
you
to give the
backpedal.
child
Like,
choice.
you said a couple of things that I think I'll pull on down along the line in terms of the point where the child begins to make the decision and how much the parent's influence will be that, and the point when a parent knows to kind of like backpedal. But for now, like the where we started the conversation, we talked about parenting yourself as an individual, and
Yeah,
it doesn't what like it doesn't elude me that the concept of parenting yourself requires discipline in a
yeah,
world filled with distraction. And I can't help but notice that not a lot of people have that discipline. Not a lot of
yes,
people have been effective in parenting themselves. You just have to go outside and just observe people make decisions. And you see that those people they become parents, all right.
good
And they have
parents, great decisions out there.
yeah. So like they become parents and they have like younger ones dependent on them and they haven't gotten to the point to the self-realization where that I have to parent myself, then parent my child. So do you have a situation where most people just learn on the job? Like I think one analogy I kind of made to understand the scenarios, I just do the map, like the time map for the average individual. So you see, like when the person is 0 to when they're like say 10 or so, they're mostly dependent on their parents. Then from teen to school, say when they're 23, 24, they are still in school, focused on career. Then 24, 25, they're working and they start falling in love. That's if they didn't fall in love before. Then they start a family. Now, for most people, the idea of starting a family is to be with somebody else. So I find somebody I'm attracted to that I like and I want to spend the rest of my life with the person. So I start to go into that familial arrangement. Now, people have a conception that, oh, we might have children. How many children do we want to have? Two, three, four. So that conversation happens. But I think for most people, it just ends at how many number of children do we want to have. The principles of raising the children, if the child will be homeschooled, the kind of school, like those other details, also to the point of how will my attitude as a person affect the child. Most people don't go through that phase. They find themselves, oh, they're in love, they're married. Then the next logical thing is to have children because I'm a married man or because I'm a married woman. So they go on to have children. So I think for the most part, you hardly find people in that mental state that actively think about how like parenting themselves to parent somebody else. So it's as if they're just going through the motion. So the first motion is finish
So
school. Yeah.
I think that there is a dialectic in this situation
All right.
where there are two sides to it. It's a continuum, right?
Okay.
You have a situation where some people are running on autopilot. Nothing is planned ahead and everything just goes. And then there is the opposite end of the continuum where um, everything is strictly planned and there is no flexibility, no deviations from that plan. I think both systems could be disastrous. For the most part, you should have a framework of what you want to do, what needs to be done. Have a framework for it, and let that framework be adaptable. Right? That framework should be adaptable, and then it will be adaptable according to the needs of the reality as you progress through the journey. So, um, in my own case, uh, well, for the most part, for the first couple of years of a child's life, I think your chief concern is that you want the child to be healthy and safe. That's the chief concern. In the second year of the child's life, you might start thinking about school. I know that some persons put their 3 month old baby in a daycare and start
Yeah.
teaching them A, B, C, D from the beginning. Personally, I wasn't in support of that. I think um, my wife might have wanted that, but then I wasn't really in support of it because I think that it's not natural. You don't, we are humans, right? You
Yeah.
don't give birth to a child and then in the first 3 months of the child's life, or 6 months, or even a year of the child's life, where the child is still trying to make sense of even their own house and their own immediate family, then you dump them in the deep end of the pool of social interaction and in addition to social interaction, you are dumping them in the deep end of the pool with respect to um, contact with germs and all that and all that. So I think it's more natural to let a child develop at home to a certain point before you start thinking about schooling. And even when you start school, the first few years of the schooling, you know, I think the people who run such schools, the nursery school, the kindergarten system, they understand that for the most part, the child needs to feel happiness and a sense of care and that sort of thing, as against rote intellectual development. You know, you don't start grinding them with A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 on a
Yeah.
regular basis, which even explains why most of those things are presented in forms of songs and nursery rhymes, so
Yeah.
that they are happy activities, they are pleasant activities, playful activities that the child might be attracted to, and by playing they learn as a consequence. So the primary objective, or I'm not sure if that's the primary objective, but in reality is that let them have fun when they are quite young, and then if they learn as a consequence of that, then it's a good thing. So that was your point, was that there should be a firm plan, but I'm saying that there should be a plan that is a bit flexible or even largely flexible, and then you would not have issues navigating. You don't have too many issues navigating. Um, you know,
Yeah. Like for
you,
me, I'm not even like I'm not very I'm not how to put the word like I'm not very caught up in the firmness of the plan, in as much as the awareness of having a child and the amount of responsibility that comes with having somebody dependent on you.
yeah,
So I think a lot of people lack that awareness, and I've spoken with a couple of people, and when they are being honest, and most of them are like, yeah, that awareness, like there's the awareness that comes from, oh, I am a father, but there's that deliberateness that says I'm a father and my actions X Y Z. Like I think for most children learn mostly from their parents. All right, so they learn by the process of mimesis. So
yeah,
if if somebody has a negative attitude towards a particular thing, so if you have an attitude that's contrary to what you're trying to teach your child, or you're trying to imbibe in your child the reading culture or the learning culture, but you on your own you don't read, you're not a learner or something, like it's difficult. You're sending the child two opposite messages. So
yeah,
that's what
yeah, yeah.
So that's where I'm kind of
Yeah.
coming from. That
Okay.
deliberateness that most people they don't have it. So it's like autopilot. like
Yes.
autopilot, and you're just looking at it like, oh, I'm having a child, I'll try. And the thing I see with people that want to become parents, and the thing they say that makes me laugh the most is, oh, I'll protect my child and take care of my child and give my child whatever my child wants, or do whatever is in my power to make the child happy and stuff. Like all those very superficial, high level answers that sounds good to the ear, but has makes no sense when you actually,
Yeah, they are not practical, right? You say you give your child whatever the child wants. If the child wants to play with a sharp knife, will you do that? Will you
yeah.
allow that? Most likely you will not.
But
So that's definitely out of the books. The primary aim for me, as I said, is for the child to be safe. So sometimes you have to make the child safe against its own will, and we know that that's because the child does not at that point understand the consequences of their actions. They don't know that the electricity is harmful. They don't know that a knife could be harmful. They don't know that hot water could be harmful. They don't know that a pin can be harmful. So even when they want to play with it, it's a question of the child's happiness versus the child's safety. So as the adult in the picture, you have to choose safety all the time. Yeah,
yeah,
you said something about being on autopilot. I can't remember exactly how you crafted it now, but I would say that if anybody who has been a reasonable adult, for some time before marriage, before child bearing, and who you can say reasonably has made some good decisions for themselves in terms of how they live their lives, then you can expect that the transition from that to um, making the right choices for a parent, I mean, for a child, might also not be so complicated for the person. Yeah. Now, if you've been a drunkard all your life, you drink till you're completely drunk, and then you have a child, and then you realize that, oh, at this point I need to withdraw from the alcohol so I can be a better parent. I think the situation is more drastic for certain people than others. So there are those who will try to live a double life. They are not even they cannot yet stop. They haven't stopped the drunkard life. However, they don't want their child to see that side of it because
yeah.
they know it is wrong. So because they know it is wrong and they continue to do it, I think that's a failure of parenting of self.
Mm,
So if you have failed to parent yourself despite knowing the right choices to make, well, it remains to be seen how effective parenting of another person will be. Now, children are very good at saying hypocrisy. Yeah. If you try to instruct a child in a certain way and you yourself don't live that way, well, I think it's reasonable to expect that the child will quickly see that hypocrisy and understand that you're not living what you preach, and maybe the real lesson you're teaching the child is you can live a double life.
true, true. Um, so if I were to ask you, maybe on a more general level, so
Yeah.
if you were to recommend, what are the best attributes do you think somebody that is looking to either become a father, a mother, or whatever the description is, what are the best attributes you think the person should have before venturing into that endeavor?
That's a complicated one. It sounds simple, but it's not. I don't think it's as simple as listing things.
Yeah, it's a more nuanced. I think it
Yeah.
requires a more nuanced answer. I know you're able to give a more nuanced answer. That's why I asked.
Let's. I think we've mentioned some of them already. The things that usually come to mind. For one, I think feeding habits are important.
Yeah.
Eating the right stuff. Eating the right stuff. You're what you eat, right?
Mhm.
For me, for a very long time, a very, very long time, I've always um, lived by the edict that I don't want to eat something that has a list of ingredients on it. You understand? Real food is ingredients. real food does not contain ingredients. Real
ingredient.
food is actually ingredients itself, if I'm
Mm,
allowed to put it that way.
mm,
So it's inevitable that a child would eat biscuits, would take some candy, some sweets, you know, some flavored drinks at some point. It's almost inevitable. But then you, as a parent, because you have lived your life a certain way, in terms of feeding habits, it will be easier to structure the feeding of your house, your family, such that the options available for the child would always be healthy food, right? And then they grow eating healthy, and that gives them that foundation for a long-term um, um, health. Another thing closely related would be exercise, right? I think.
yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that somebody who does not exercise cannot be a good parent, but I think all of these things come down to discipline.
Mm-hmm.
If you are if you are consistent with exercising, it's some evidence that you can discipline yourself and make right choices. And if you can do that, um, um, then it is reasonable to expect that some of that discipline will rub off on your child, either by you directly teaching them or they learning through the process of mimesis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, then emotional maturity is another.
Mm.
Maturity is another. I mean, a child cannot parent another child, even though we live in an unfortunate world where it happens from time to time.
So
However,
I'd like you to explain what emotional maturity is before you go on to say how it relates to being a better parent.
emotional maturity comes, there are many, many facets to it, I would say. Um,
So for the purpose of this conversation, just
so,
keep
so,
surface.
so, so, so I would say that emotional maturity, there's a delicate balance um, um, between love and discipline and play, that sort of thing.
Mm,
Yeah. So
mm,
um, you're supposed to love yourself. You're supposed to love your neighbors. You're also supposed to do a lot of other things. You're supposed to um, um, not take shit. Yeah, right. You're
mm-hmm,
supposed to not take shit from people. You're supposed to be nice to people. You're supposed to have a firm grasp of your own emotions with respect to a particular scenario. What am I feeling at this moment, and um how am I responding, or how am I tempted to respond? You know,
mm-hmm,
all of those things contribute to the concept of emotional maturity. I think it would be hard for me to have a very one line or two line definition of what emotional maturity is. But then I think that people who generally can have a very good degree of self-control, especially with the with how they manifest their emotions, both positive and negative. Um, I think that that can be seen as a level of emotional maturity. Now, I'm not saying people should be completely emotionless. You definitely have to feel things. You feel joy, you feel sadness, you feel anger, but then you also have to manage them in the right proportions at the right
mm.
times. Yes. So, one thing I can say for myself is that maybe it would be that I don't panic much.
Okay.
When there is a problem, if there is a problem on ground, I'm not likely to get hysterical almost immediately. And I'm sure you can picture what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
That hysteria and panic and so on is not really part of my makeup. And incidentally, it's something I found myself doing a very long time ago. I think I was in SS1.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in SS1. I was quite young. I think I was around 13 or so, 12. Can't really remember. But there was some sort of crisis in school, and everybody was running all over the place. And it occurred to me it was like an epiphany that I don't know where the problem is, and everybody is running in every direction. So what if I run towards the problem?
Hmm.
You understand? What if I run towards the problem? So I think it was an issue of, some of these schools where there is an inter-school conflict, and
Yeah, yeah,
uh, you know rough boys want to be rough with other people, and so you get the scenario. So
yeah.
yeah, I wasn't really, it didn't, the instinct to run was there, but it was immediately checked by, hey, you need to find out exactly what is going on, how severe it is, and what direction it is coming from before you make a move. Because people ran all over the place, people were falling, getting injuries, you know, and in the end, there was no crisis at all. There was nothing in the end warranted the earlier reaction. There was no conflict. So maybe somebody played a prank, or maybe somebody saw something and misunderstood and raised an alarm, and sent everybody into panic. So that's the earliest example in my life I can remember of being almost completely calm in a chaotic situation that was potentially dangerous. So, but then that presence of mind
Yeah,
to think through things and not rush, to think through things and not rush. I think it's a I don't want to say it's a good parenting trait because it sounds like I'm saying it for myself, but I think that if there is a crisis and you and your child are panicking, then it won't look nice. So
yeah.
a parent should have that presence, that calmness. If you might be scared, you would be scared for sure that something might get out of hand, but then you should be the calming presence in the room. Is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
I,
So
I,
is
I
does,
thought,
does that count as emotional maturity?
like like from the explanation, like from what you said, like I think I would go on to say emotional maturity is like the most important and significant attribute to have as a parent. And why I'd say that is because it's like emotional maturity is broad, like it's a self-sufficient trait. So it has like other facets, like
It
it's just
covers a lot of things. Yeah.
yes. So like it's if it's something you are like somebody is able to understand and practice and appreciate, like I think it's a very and because like from the stories I've heard, like most times early parenting, most especially, it takes a toll on your emotion, not necessarily your mental acumen or your mental acumen in terms of IQ, intellectual drag. Is maybe when they start going to school and you have to do a couple of assignments and all that. But
Yeah.
with child bringing is like the patience, like the being aware, knowing what is going on. Because yes, I can make the case that early children they're kind of like they're intelligent and all that, but they are more
You mean
emotional
first,
beings than
first,
intelligent beings.
first child and second child and so on?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by early children?
I mean like when you give birth to a child, like the couple of years of formation. So
Okay, okay,
so
okay.
when they are still young, infants, take from like
Early
zero to
stages of the human
yes,
journey
early stages
post
of the yeah,
pregnancy.
yeah, early stage of the human journey post pregnancy. I think is a more emotional endeavor than intellectual endeavor because you are
Yeah,
basically trying to understand the child, and the child is trying to understand its environment and communicate, and it's all those feedbacks from the environment, and it's mostly through like conveying emotions to the parent, and the parent being able to decipher what his emotions are to know when it's hungry, when it's in
yeah,
pain.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really think that I would like from the conversation so far, I would rate emotional maturity up there as to what's required to actually be a good parent.
How do you factor in risk awareness? Risk awareness in terms of everything, risk and safety into this emotional maturity thing. Because I tend to rate risk very highly.
Mm,
I think from an evolutionary perspective,
yeah,
you don't need to be happy to reproduce. So,
yeah,
so The primary aim from an evolutionary perspective would be that the child survives to pass on the genes to the next level. So, is there a dialectic there? Is it a trade-off that needs to be made, or can we simplify something that involves both?
No, I don't think um I don't think there's a trade-off between risk and safety and emotional maturity. So like I said initially, like emotional maturity is all encompassing. All right. So the first instance of being emotional mature is, first of all, I need to know where I am emotionally, and I need to know where the child is at emotionally, and I need to know what is required to take the child from this level of helplessness to the level where the child becomes more self-sufficient. So
Yeah.
if I know what is required, so I'm able to do a proper risk analysis. So I'm able to do like a safety and a risk analysis to know the right trade-offs. So I know the decisions that I can make, that I won't be too hysterical in making those decisions. That I won't be on the other spectrum where I'm panicky so that I'll make excessive decisions, or I won't be in the other extreme where I am under I am under analyzing the risk, and I'm inadvertently exposing the child to more risky situations. So like that emotional maturity gives me a balance to know there's this end of the spectrum, but what does it require to take the child to the next level, and I do that. And part of that is the safety and and removing the necessary risk from the child. So so I might be stretching it, but I think emotional maturity covers a lot of things.
Yeah, it covers a lot of things, but there are some things it cannot just make up for. If I think that biologically it is expected, especially for the female folk, that when a mother becomes pregnant and has a baby, that period there's an increased sense of risk awareness. They are more more aware of risks in the environment, and so they're more sensitive to risk basically. Yeah. Um however, I think there's this thing about, I think risk awareness is a sense. It's a
Okay.
sense, and it may be more developed in some people than others. When you point out that, hey, this scenario you've been in for the past 30 minutes is a risky situation, some people do not realize on their own that they have been in a risky situation for the past 30 minutes. You have to point it out to them before they notice it. So, is that a failure of emotional intelligence, or is just not? Is just a sense that is insufficiently developed? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I had a bit of
you heard what I said.
a network lapse. Can you come again?
Oh, okay. I said that the thing about risk is that I think I tend to see risk awareness as a sense like, it's a sense basically, such that some people have it more developed than others. For example, um, some person might be in a risky situation for say the past. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Um, a person might be in a risky situation for 10, 15, 20 minutes and not realize that they are in a risky situation.
Mm,
You understand? However,
yeah.
some other person might instantly recognize that this is a risky situation. So while some people can recognize it instantly, others need it to be pointed out to them before they can see that it is a risky situation. So is that a problem of emotional immaturity or insufficient risk awareness, insufficient development of the risk sense?
So I think insufficient risk awareness is a better I think it's a better way to look at it
So
because
it's not a failure of emotion,
like
of emotional maturity.
no, I don't think it's a failure of emotional maturity because like you said, like some people might be naturally attuned to either being risk
To
more
identify
analytical
risk.
in terms of the assessment of risk. Like your I think basically if you do a risk analysis, you have to do like a risk tolerance, like to understand the kind of person you are. That if you're high risk, if you're a high risk tolerant person, if you're medium, if you're a low risk tolerant person. So the place where I sort in that emotional maturity into the equation is, like I said, like you have to understand yourself first. Like for me, and I want to start, like I know that at the beginning of the child, they're mostly helpless, they're dependent on me, and there's a high risk factor associated with them being kids at that point in time. So if I have done the Gazuntas and I've looked at myself and I know that oh I'm a naturally a high like I have a low risk tolerance or I have a high risk tolerance and all that. So what does that mean for me as an individual? How am I likely to respond to situations? So am I likely to respond to situations that are high risk as if they are nothing because I'm open to taking more risk? So then how do I factor in having a child in the mix? Let's say, for example, say like as a single person. So as a single person, the amount of financial risk you can take might be a little bit higher, might be upper to your risk tolerance and all that. So you might have a higher risk tolerance as a single person. So you might want to take in more risk. But once you decide to get married to somebody else, your risk tolerance naturally reduces, or you tend to, like a responsible adult, we tend to recalibrate his or her risk tolerance. So your risk tolerance might not necessarily reduce, but the amount of risk you're willing to take, you might want to reduce that because you're factoring in that it's not just you, you also have like other people dependent on you. So you know that once the situation goes bust, it's not just going to affect you alone, it's going to cascade down to other people. So then you might want to create more hedge or more buffer. You might want to reduce your impact or the surface impact of the risk when they go belly up. So that is where I think emotional maturity is. Like once you've identified yourself as an individual, like who you are in terms of your risk tolerance and stuff. So the emotional maturity helps you build on top of that, transposes it to your current situation. Okay, I'm a father. This is the person I am. I'm a father now. Like, what are the best decisions that are best suited for this child I'm trying to bring up, not just for myself or not the kind of person I am. Like, what is best suited for the child? Then I adopt whatever it is that is required at that point in time to get the child to the next from the very dependent um, baby,
State.
yeah, to like a more independent, they can think and do things for themselves. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I think,
I think you're right in that sense. I would just like to add that I think another angle to the risk emotional maturity being a factor in terms of risk is that if you know that you tend to be not very aware of risk in your environment, then you can identify that as a weakness and consciously work to improve it.
yeah, correct.
You understand? You will not let yourself remain in an autopilot situation. Yeah, you will not
Yeah,
let yourself an autopilot situation where you have a child around you and you are so completely immersed in your phone, and you forget to lift your head once in a while, once every couple of minutes to look at the child to see what they are playing with. You understand? Because guy, children know how to look for danger. It's like there's a magnet. It's like there's a magnet that attracts them towards the most dangerous thing you can find around.
yeah,
You as an adult, maybe because of experience, you no longer identify that as something that can harm you. Mhm.
yeah,
But it is something that can definitely harm the child if the child handles it wrongly. So you might not notice its presence there. So part of this emotional maturity, that you're talking about is understanding that this thing is not risky to me, but it could be risky to the child. You understand?
Yeah.
And then working that into your environmental awareness, your situational awareness of things around me. Is there scissors lying around me? Of course, when I was single or without a child, the scissors doesn't represent any harm on a normal day. A pin hardly represents any harm. A razor blade doesn't represent any harm. A cable, electricity, to a large extent doesn't represent any harm when all things being equal. However, emotional maturity would uh, make you aware that there is another factor in play. There is a child in play, and that child doesn't have the experience with these things as you do, and uh, because of that, they can mishandle these things and get injured. So, yeah, emotional intelligence definitely has a role to play in risk.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, even though like I noticed like I think I was looking at I don't know like I don't know when I got to the mindset, but I got to the point where when I look at things, especially house and maybe some type of cars, or house most especially. Anyway, like I see some people selling very nice houses and they have like very expensive houses. And the first thing I look when I look into the house, like the house is not properly child proof. Then you see a stairway that has no guardrails or something. You see very glass
yeah,
partition
yeah,
between the up floor and down floor. And I'm
yeah,
thinking that this is a nightmare looking to happen, especially if you are going to raise children in that house. So that's why I said like part of that being in that state of mind is realizing that okay, as an individual, I might want this. It might be appealing to me, but what does that
but,
mean if I'm going
but
to
not
raise
right. Yeah, if I'm going to have another. Yeah,
exactly, especially in that same house? So you might want to go through the stress of childproofing the house and creating all sort of safety net so that it doesn't harm the child and all that. So
yeah,
yeah, I think that
yeah,
the emotional maturity like it plays like another thread I want to pull. Yeah, the onset
yeah.
of the conversation when I asked you what does being a father mean to you, what does fatherhood mean to you, and you said something in the line that I think you said something about like being a fatherhood is not just about like being the father, it's also the like what is best for the child and also like the societal aspect of raising the child and all that.
Yeah.
So like from my perspective, from my vintage point, I I think the current societal makeup has presents more harm than good to a child upbringing. So, case in point is like the internet, like this internet age and the smartphone age we're in, like it kind of promotes the short attention span kind of things where people are like what's it called? People are into short clips for like 30 seconds and all that. And also the
That is.
outrage culture on social media, then the moral decadence in the society. So there are a lot of things that you could point to today's societal culture, especially in this part of the world where we live in, where some forms of habits are glorified. That doesn't necessarily make you a net contributor to the global economy at scale. So you see that society is pushing those fads, because at every point in time the child upbringing, there will always be fad and all that. So like, how do you balance that with the child upbringing?
So, for me, we have Netflix at home. Yeah.
Yeah,
But then I don't let there is even you can even create an account, a baby account, where the baby will be exposed to you know where there's only baby content there from 0 to 7 years plus or something like that.
yeah,
And and of course there are lots of things, there are lots of learning material there, but then I prefer to curate the content that the child is exposed to. You understand?
yeah,
So in terms of music, yeah, the nursery rhymes that I expect that the child would encounter in school, yeah, the child will encounter in school. So download a lot of them from online sources, download them and put them in a drive that you can easily connect to the TV and have them play for an hour or two, when you want the child to be exposed to that. In fact, I have folders in my drive. There is a folder for entertainment where those nursery rhymes are, and there is a folder for learning where most some of the content is about learning things, learning colors, learning shapes, learning letters and numbers and things like that. So I think it makes sense. It makes sense to curate the content that your child will be exposed to in this age. Don't let the child have free reign on a on a mobile device where they continue to scroll and scroll and scroll on their own, scroll and jump, click something, scroll, because you don't know what the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm or Amazon algorithm, if you're using Kindle, Amazon Kindle, you
Yeah.
don't know what the algorithm will throw up, and the color will be attractive, and the child will decide to click on it, and then, you know, the child would start consuming content that it shouldn't consume. So, um, I think for me, that's one way I'm managing it for now. I know that eventually I'm going to have to change strategy. I cannot curate for forever. But like I said, in the earliest of stages where you cannot be philosophical in the
Mm-hmm.
conversations with the child, you have to be a bit authoritarian. And then eventually you become more philosophical. It will be conversations and so on, you know. And then there should be things around too, especially when the child. I'm sorry if I'm talking mostly from the perspective of a child who's really, really young, 0 to 2 years old, because that's
Yeah,
what I
I
have
understand.
experience with. So there should be offline sources of excitement, sources of curiosity, sources
Mm.
of stimulation. You should be able to stimulate and sustain curiosity in a child by offline means, which means have physical letters and numbers around the house. Um, have animal models, lion, cat, fish, and so on. Have such things in the house, for the child to interact with from time to time, spend time with the child, teaching the child the names of those things. Let the child understand that there are things outside of the screen that are important,
Mm.
outside of the TV screen or phone screen or tablet screen that are important. Because you see, you've talked about mimesis, how children learn by basically imitating what they see.
Yeah.
And almost all adults spend most of their free time on their phone.
Mm.
The child is saying that. The child is saying that. And try as you might to get the child off the screen. If your example doesn't reflect it, then you are not likely to get great results with your discipline. You might end up just being an authoritarian parent, who does one thing and then disciplines somebody else for doing exactly the same thing. You understand. So if
Yeah.
you don't want to be that uh,
Hypocritical.
hypocritic parent, then you should do your best to lead by example. If you have to use the phone sometimes, maybe you should hide from the child, especially when you have some play toys around and the child is in the mood for play and wants to play. Kindly put your phone aside. Do those things with the child. Let the child see that you also take part in this. That means it has to be good.
Mm.
Whatever that your child sees you do, the child's sense of navigating the world, you are largely a compass for the child. So anything you do will be seen as something good. Therefore, the child would want to copy. So play with the things. I mean, yeah, yeah. In fact, if you're not into rhymes, learn the rhymes and so on. There are a lot of things you have to put aside to come down to the child's level and do what's good for the child. There is this song that is quite common. It's a nursery rhyme. I don't know if you know it.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure you know it. It's because it's in every nursery school out there, at least in the English-speaking world. They talk about Maybe I should just sing it. It's a very short one. Um, Ring around the roses, pocket full of roses,
Yeah.
ash, ashes will all fall down. You know the song.
Yeah. I do.
Now, it's not a song I like. Why? Because I know the history. I know the history behind this song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the history behind the song. It's a song relating. You know, you've heard of the Black Death. There was a
Yeah.
plague.
Yeah.
There
I've
was a
heard of
plague
that. Is it the
in,
one
in
that came with
Europe.
the Spanish influencer also?
No, Spanish influenza is much later. This one was just the Black Death. It was around. Spanish influenza was much later. This one is around the 1300s.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's where that song came from. So ring around the rosy, right? It's like when people got the disease. When people got the disease,
Yeah.
it formed a ring on their skin, different rings on their skin, and I think the rings had a center.
Oh,
So that's what that first line refers to, ring around the rosy, right? And then there was a superstition back then that if you carry a bunch of roses in your pocket as you move around, or in a pot or in a bottle as you
yeah.
move around, the roses would help you avoid the plague. So you would not catch the plague and die. So that's what the second line is referring to. Ring
Oh,
around the roses, a pocket full of roses, right? Then
yeah.
the next line, ashes, ashes, meaning at the time, because the deaths were so plenty, the easiest way to get rid of the bodies was to cremate.
Yeah.
So everybody became ashes, essentially. Now, regardless of what you did, regardless of how, because at that time there was no understanding of germs and so on, no antibiotics and blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
this plague just ran through the population and decimated the population. So everybody died. That's what the last line is saying. We all fall down. You understand? Everybody
Oh,
died. So it's like I don't like this song. It's like a funeral song that has been made into a I
Alright.
don't know, a happy song, a nursery rhyme, you know, ring around the roses, pockets full of roses, ashes all fall down. So, but then children like it. What will you do? You join and sing. They call if they if they call you, when you sing the song, you hold hands, you go
Yeah.
round, 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 and then you fall. So, and because she's much closer to the ground, she falls more quickly. It takes her a split second to get to the ground. I have to come all the way from 6 feet to get to the ground. And if you don't fall, it's an incomplete experience for her. You know.
Yeah.
So, um, how did we get to this point? I was saying that you have to put aside, some of
Yeah.
there's an intellectual side to parenting, yeah, which means you have to stimulate and sustain curiosity in in things generally, things that are good for the child to know, and you yourself have to be an intellectually curious person to be able to um, in inspire and sustain the curiosity in your child. If you're not, you might find it more difficult and you would find yourself outsourcing to someone else, outsourcing to the school, outsourcing to the house help, outsourcing to the other parent, something like that. But then, if you have a reasonably sound intellectual, um, um, should I call it, background or so on,
Yeah.
in the world of today, in the society of today, it goes a long way in helping your parenting as well. So I would say that some failures of parenting, some things that, let's say, like we're talking about risk,
Yeah.
in some cases, you might just not know from an intellectual perspective that something is risky.
Mm.
You understand? It's like drinking Coke and not knowing that Coke is harmful for you down the line. It's something you have to read about somewhere. Somebody has to teach it to you. So if you are not exposed to that knowledge, then you don't know. So in that case, your failure to parent properly is not a failure of, you know, um, it's not a failure of emotional maturity or stuff like that. It's just a failure of intellectual what do I call it now? Intellectual acuity. You just don't know something. So you don't know what you don't know, and and such, it affects you in ways that you might not even realize until much later. I don't know if that makes sufficient
Yeah, it
sense.
makes sense. Before we leave on this issue, there's something you said that caught my attention, and I want to reiterate, and especially in this age of the digital age. Like you said that like the parent should be able to create something offline, that is able to captivate the child's attention. And you gave an example of the figurines, like the toys and like the animal figures and stuff. And I think that is very crucial. Like most of the things I see these days, like parents get very excited or very giddy when their children know how to press phone or press laptop or tab at their early ages and stuff. So and they make it out to seem, oh, like, oh, this one a technology child or something in that sort of light, in the pidgin English.
Yeah,
You get, and they make it sound like it's a
yeah.
thing. And I look at them and I'm like, are you serious? Like the child is just basically imitating what the child is seeing you
What you're
do.
exactly imitating, there's nothing to they see you use your thumb to scroll, scroll, scroll. Eventually they will figure it out. Oh, my thumb can do this. Scroll, 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 press something. It's simple. It's
Yeah.
simple. It's not technology. Animals can be taught to do the
It
same
is
thing.
like,
Monkeys do, you know.
so
So
having that offline component, and that requires that even the parent, you're at that state of affair, you're at that state of mind where you're able to take time away from the online world and even go offline, read a book, do a pet project, even if it's something as simple as
yeah,
fixing the house when things are broken and have the child with you, like
yeah,
because the
yeah,
children, they don't come pre-programmed knowing what is interesting or what is exciting or something.
yeah,
It's what they see
yeah.
us
They learn
enjoy doing,
from programming.
yeah, that they start to gain a basis of what is exciting for themselves. So if you actually take them through that process of having them see that learning a different language is interesting, learning how to play a musical instrument is interesting, learning how to paint is interesting, learning how to cook is interesting, learning how to get
Yeah,
different skills. You kind of like bring all those offline activities and you put it in such a
yeah,
way that captivates them, that interests them. Like it creates like for a good learning ground, as opposed to having them
yeah.
just holding on the phone, watching cartoon on YouTube, even if it's even if it's a children,
Content,
even if it's
baby
children
content. Yeah,
baby content and all that. So there's an aspect of the passive and active stimulation of the brain. So all those videos and all those things are like passive in their nature because the child just have to sit down and do. But at that stage in their life, they need to be more actively stimulated because that is when the neurons in their head are developing. So the more you actively stimulate them, give them things to do, and then their neural pathway is still flexible. So they can get to learn a lot of things before it solidifies. They can create new neural link and all that and map new activities onto those things. So I think, yeah, it's very crucial that parents should earlier on think of offline methods through which they can actually teach their children or create a learning ground for them. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. So you are exactly on point. One thing we've not talked about is spiritual development of a
Ye-
child. What's your own take on that?
Okay. My take on the spiritual development of the child is like the way this spiritual development is packaged now is packaged with religion and all that. So I strongly believe that religion as a framework has some grounding principles that is actually that is actually helpful in teaching the children morals. Like don't lie, like those morals actually helps them to model responsible lives. Like don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. And there's this like part of like reading mimesis and all that, like Rene Girard, like he went through the process of describing how mimesis works through the scapegoat and all that. Then he gave an example of Jesus Christ, and he's saying that what mimesis does is it creates conflict in the society because like you are copying this next person and this person is like, so you have that case of people copying each other, enters into a competitive loop and becomes a vicious circle that creates envy and strife. So the best way to break that mimesis loop is to copy, like to imitate somebody or to copy somebody or have that mimetic relationship with somebody or something that doesn't generate into envy and strife. And from his example, like Jesus Christ is like, we gave Jesus Christ as the perfect example for that because so there's so what I'm saying is like religion provides children with the positive mimesis. So you can actually it creates all this, it creates some rules and guidelines that you can actually copy, that you can emulate, like love, compassion, don't lie, don't steal, and all those positive that kind of like helps them if they apply it to create like a better foundation to be well adjusted and compassionate people in the society. So that is why I think in their earlier phase, religion plays an important role. So the more they get older, so they get to the point where they can have a sustained intellectual capacity, like you might want to descend, you might want to show them the difference between religion and spirituality and like give them enough informational context and enough exposure so that they can what's it called make decisions for themselves as to the was as the best outcome or how best they want to lead their own life. I think that's where my head is at the moment. So I don't know if I'd like to hear your own thought also.
Yeah, you've basically captured all the relevant points. Yeah, so um, religion has a very big role to play. And in fact, something else to say before this about the strength of mimesis. A
Yeah,
lot of people think that they are in the religion that they're in because they chose it. Yeah, yes, my parents brought me into it, but then eventually I decided for myself. I don't think they realize how much of a lie that is because 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 the statistics show otherwise. If
yeah,
it was easy to disconnect from what you were brought up with, then it would be a 50-50 thing
true.
across all religions. 50% of people born as Christians would eventually decide because just because of randomness, if it is really a
Yeah,
choice, 50% of people born in Christianity would decide to choose a different religion when they decide to make the choice. 50% of people born in Islam would also do same. 50% of Buddhists and so on. Everybody would do same because there is really a choice. But the reality is that there is really not much of a choice. Most people continue where they were born. So that speaks to the strength of mimesis, how you copy what is around you, you copy the environment you are born into, the social context, the religious context you are born into. Um, that's it. There is really not much of a choice, and that's why the number of persons who change religions is actually very tiny as compared to those who maintain where they were born. So it's not really a choice. However, um, whatever every religion has good tenets that are. Oh yes, we have company now. She's she's flying a plane.
oh, I see. And she's giving us 1 hour of uninterrupted conversation.
Yeah, but she's flying a plane now, so flying a plane cannot be silent. Anyway, so um um what was I saying? Yeah, religion is a good foundation for introducing people to spirituality, regardless of the religion. Um, I think a few persons might be confused as to what's the difference between spirituality and religion, but I think that's a discussion for another day. The
Yeah,
basic tenets are, like you've mentioned, love, compassion, forgiveness, honesty, integrity, and so on. All of those things can be found in every religion out there. So, and those values are actually fundamental to spirituality. So, um, regardless of where you find yourself in terms of the religious um, options out there, it makes sense to to start imbibing these things in children from a very early age. I know there will be people out there who, uh, and there have been people who try to teach spirituality or these values that we value so much
Yeah.
um, outside of a outside of a religious context. However, I think that in the earliest ages of of a child, um, as with many other things, you cannot get philosophical with a child as to why it is important to be honest or why it is important to be this and that and that. It just has to come from an autocratic,
Authoritarian, yeah.
yeah, authoritarian position, and then eventually there will be that conversation. You look at the different dialectics that are associated with the thing, and then help the child um, achieve a synthesis that makes sense.
Okay.
You know. So
I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think like that's like the most difficult part of child upbringing. In fact, I
okay,
think the education aspect of a child is like the most difficult part of child upbringing. Because like one thing you mentioned is that like parents or guardians they tend to outsource child
a lot of
upbringing. So in
things.
terms of
They
sending them to
outsource a lot of
school,
things.
yeah, they're relying so much on your religious leader, pastor, imam, or whomever it is to like imbibe
Yeah,
that child.
yeah,
And I think that's because most people in their day-to-day activities and in their life, like they never get to that point like where they are able to differentiate between religion and spirituality. Like we said, they are still running that auto program of go to church,
yeah,
serve God.
yeah, yeah,
If I don't do this, if I do this. Like most people are still running that auto program, so they haven't gotten to the point where they've actually analyzed themselves in the context of their religion or environment or society, and they're
yeah,
able to what's it called? They're able to do that differentiation that says this is me as an individual, like this is the social influence on me. This is how my belief system, this is how my society, this is how my family, this is how my parents, this is the impact they have on me. So they've not been able to what's it called? To extricate themselves sort of from that and see themselves for who they are. So I
yeah.
don't want to call it enlightenment because enlightenment comes like it's much more deeper than that. But it's like a progressive
Yeah,
step towards enlightenment. Like they haven't discovered
yeah,
themselves. They're still running those societal, those religious, those familial programming that everybody runs. So and then as a
yeah,
parent, you can't give what you don't have. So
yes,
if you are not very attuned that way, you won't be able to guide your child towards spiritual enlightenment or spirituality. If you are not if you're not mentally attuned towards knowledge, you won't be able to guide your child towards seeking knowledge or seeking truth. You just let the child
yes,
do the normal program, go to church, join the choir, or do whatever it is that is being done, go to school, get the degree, get a job, start their own family, and repeat the same circle we see every day. So you have to have that DNA to want all those things, to see life differently before you can impact it to your children. And it's a beautiful thing, but unfortunately, not a lot of people will be able to do that. Even if when they know that is what is supposed to be done, they still won't be able to do it because of how difficult that process is. Not necessarily that the act itself is difficult, the process is difficult, like the things you have to go through, like the layers of yourself you have to peel back to kind of like understand the situation. It's not an easy process. So I think we'll still be stuck with that for a very
that's 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 well captured. Something else that just came to mind is in this whole parenting thing. We've been talking about parenting of self and parenting of the child. I think a lot of parents out there would find themselves in a situation where sometimes, or a lot of times, or most of the time, they have to parent the other parent as well in order to successfully parent the child.
before we go there, before we go there, I want us to touch on something that kind of like ties on to the concept of value. So
Okay. Okay.
so like I think the situation, the environment or the uniqueness of the situation where you'd have to parent another parent is when I don't want to say the value systems are not aligned, but it's like the understanding of what value is different for both parents. So
Okay.
at the micro level, all right,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
micro level, like there's a semblance. Okay, this is what value is. We want our child to eat and all those things and all those things. But at the micro level, like once the what's it called, the picture begins to expand and how you achieve all that, you see that the value is disconnected. And I know we've had like this conversation offline, like the society these days focuses so much. There's a lot of focus on emphasis on value, but the value is towards the monetary aspect of the value. So you have a
Yeah.
situation whereby one parent is overworking just to put money on the table, to put food on the table, and sometimes they tend to neglect the familial responsibility, which in itself is a value on its own, but you cannot directly quantify it in monetary terms. So that shift, I think it creates that disconnect where you have a situation where one parent that has like a broader view of what value is would have to parent another parent that is still focused on the micro level of value in terms of money and bringing food to the table, or I want to give my child the best things in life. Yeah.
Yeah. So value is one way to look at the concept of parenting and other parents. There is also other aspects to it as well. Like we've talked about emotional maturity,
Yeah.
spirituality, intellect, risk awareness. These are things that sometimes one parent might be more aware than others than the other parent, and I think in for the benefit of the child, you want at least both parents to be at a certain minimum level of agreement on on some of the things. So the parent who is more aware might have to bring the other parent up to speed uh, so that they can together do the job properly. Because it doesn't help too much if one parent is, making sure the child is as safe as possible and not playing with knives, and the other parent is not very aware, is not always, should I say, present. The other parent doesn't have that presence of mind
Of
to
mine. Yeah.
notice when the child has gone into the kitchen and has been quiet for some time, probably has picked up the knife or is playing with the gas, things like that. It helps that one parent can be aware, but one parent will not always be present, and every other, and it helps. It's for the child, the benefit of the child, if both
Both
parents
parents.
are actually aware to that point. Now, talking about the value thing, yes, we are in a society today where I mean, value comes down to money, basically. The value of a person even is judged by how much money the person makes. This is a conversation we had, I think, 2 years ago. Myself, you, and Adura, and so on. I feel like there should be the concept of value. It wasn't always money. If you look at history, there were other things that were highly valued. When they said someone was a man of value, or value was attached to the concept of a person, a man or a woman, it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily about resources or money. Sometimes value came down to integrity.
Yeah.
Value came down to honesty. Value came down to loyalty. Value came down to bravery and things like that. But it seems like all of that has now, in our quest for simplicity, because those things are complex, bravery in one case might not be one person might be brave in one area and not so brave in another area, and then you'll be tasked with, you want to um, you question as to whether the person is brave in general. You understand? But I think as humanity developed and came to the present day, the need for simplicity became stronger and stronger, and money became an easy way to value a person. There are still situations where people would value things other than money, but money is quite central at the moment, and tragically so. So, in the context of parenting, you know, of course, you need money to send your child to good schools. You need money to buy nice things for your child, like those figurines that I talked about. Without money, you might have to mold them from clay if you have the skill, things like that. But because with some money, you can buy such things. Um, but I still think that the role of money might be overplayed. For example,
Mhm.
um, for example, you might want to you might have a lot of money but not have the health to actually look after your child properly. You understand? And now I think to an extent it's largely true that nobody can take care of a child better than you to an
Yeah.
extent. So you might have the money to pay someone else to do it for you, but that person might not. It is generally best if you can do it yourself. So don't put yourself at risk to the extent that your health would suffer and you will not be able to parent properly. Don't and I mean the risk can come in various forms. Don't drive risky driving. Don't engage in risky lifestyles like drinking and driving at night and things like that. You might get into an accident. You might actually die and leave a lot of money for the child. But then, for the greater part of the child's life, the child might need the child might need you more than the money. You understand?
Yeah.
The child might need you more than the money. So um, there is a sense of value there, right? The child values your time. The child values your attention, your that interaction with you for as long as possible, much more than the money. You know, eventually down the line, when you are 90 plus, yeah, if you can leave the child a bunch of money, no problem when you die, but you shouldn't live a lifestyle that endangers you while your children are still too young, to basically navigate the world themselves. And even if there are people around who will take care of them and love them properly, there will always be that space that only you could have filled, in an emotional space that only you could have filled. And I think as parents try to hustle to provide the best for the child, remember that you as a person, as a parent, you are also one of those things that constitute the best for the child.
Mm.
You understand? Not just the toys or the school or the environment where you live, the house, the quality and of the size of a TV screen and blah blah blah. You
Mhm.
as an individual is the most important factor amongst all of those things. So if you want to give the child the best, you be your best. And don't be your best at the office, be your best at home.
Mm. Like that's a very beautiful sentiment that I agree to, because like I see like a lot of people these days, the social emphasis on, oh, how much you bring to the table, sending your children to the best school and all that. Yes, yeah, without the saying and without being naive, that requires a lot of monetary resources and all that. But the concept of like happiness or peace or those things that are abstract, they are not necessarily things that money can buy. Like, yes, money can amplify your current state of being where you'd have like more opportunities to do better things or put yourself in a position where you can actually attain those states of being, but it doesn't substitute for it. So if you optimize for those things, you find out that you can do them with less money. But if you're optimizing for money to achieve them, you see yourself on a different trajectory. Like on that note, since we're talking about couples and parents in the family, so like if you're like, as everybody, if you get married to somebody else, like you have your own value system, your belief system, your want and your needs. Like your significant other has their own value system, their want and need. All right. So there's that. There'll always be that. What's the word? What's it called? There'll always be that expectation conflict between what a mother wants for the child and what a father wants for the child. I don't want to believe that it will be 100% harmonized all the time. So during that issue of expectation, during those phases of expectation conflict, like what are the best ways do you think like parents can resolve that?
So I think that there are different ways that are available for approaching such questions, and I think it goes to the fundamentals of the family itself. Are you in a family? I mean, the couple have to decide the kind of family they want to run. Is it a family where, yeah, the father is the leader of the house basically, and that makes the final decision on most things, so the mother, yes, would contribute her opinion, would say what she thinks is best and how things should be done, and trust that the father would take into consideration all of those factors, synthesize and come up with a um, a decision, a strategy going forward that um, that works best for the
Yeah,
child. So that's one framework. I don't think, and then in another sense, you can do some form of division of labor where the person with the most expertise in a particular area makes the final decision. So yeah, some people are more aware of health issues than others. So the person with the most, if there is a conflict, that understanding that okay, we disagree here, however you have more experience with this, therefore this is let's go with your plan, and let's work together to make sure the plan works, and also have the flexibility to change if things don't go the right way. I think that that's one way to do it. Let the person with the most expertise decide at that point, or let the person with the most, it's easy to work out a scenario where at least there can be a decision maker on on issues that arise. Where should this child go to school? Where should where I mean, what kind of school should the child attend? How far away from the home? There are a lot of factors that come into play: the pedigree of the school, the environment within the school, the quality that you expect, and so on. Recommendations from other persons. You know, it all works together. So um,
yeah,
you can run a democratic system. However, if it's just you and the other partner and or the other parent, and you are on opposite sides, then it's obviously a stalemate. So to reasonably circumvent that, if it's something you can go online research and find the best way to go about it, something that's obviously an option that we have in today's world. If you can refer to a different authority, say somebody that you both respect, could be a person in the church or wherever or your mosque, or a religious leader. It could be your parents. You can trust that your parents can make the right choice regardless of whose opinion it is. You understand? Um, there are ways around these things. For me personally, I think I tend to let some things go if I know that I don't have sufficient knowledge, and I believe that the child's mom has better knowledge about this specific area. Then go ahead and make your decide. But also, if it's something we can monitor, if we can monitor your 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 solution and identify a potential um, problem with the solution that requires us to change the solution, then we can do that as well. So um, I
Yeah,
think that's basically that's
yeah,
basically even in a situation where one parent can have a final decision, it makes sense to have a plan A, plan B, plan C. So um, it can work out.
yeah. I think that's a very reasonable framework. And from what you've described, like one key element I want to point out is like coming into that kind of arrangement, like the kind of marriage setting is where the person with the best knowledge in that area makes the final decision. Like
Yeah,
it takes out like it comes from the place of understanding that ultimately both of you have a common goal to achieve what is
yes,
best for the child and have
yeah,
like a cohesive family where peace and love is. So, and that
yeah,
is bigger than the individual ego because most
yeah.
people come with their sense of identity, which
An
is like
ego
ego,
perspective.
yeah, from
Yeah,
into marriages and with the way the social dynamic plays out these days, where people come into the marriage and they don't want it to seem as if they are being overshadowed by the man, in the name of the man domineering them and stuff. Then the men they want to be quote head of the house, and they tend to be obstinate and my decision has to be the final and stuff.
have to be
So
right.
that's
Have to
just
be right.
play. That's just playing an image game. That's playing an identity game. That's playing an ego game. It doesn't help the child. Like whatever the child is the best decision for the child, and any one of the parents can have that because no one person has complete information at all times. So that's actually very good. I think I like your approach. Like I think it's good, and I think I recommend it for most people. If for nothing, it helps them put their ego in check. Once you're able to check your ego in a relationship, it kind of helps. So on a final note question, so to say, like for the past 2 years of being a father, what has been the most difficult part of your fatherhood journey so far? Yes, okay, you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you.
I think your audio is a bit
I
low.
can hear you clearly, and nothing has changed from my end. Are you
Please
able to
remind me
hear
the
me?
question you asked again.
All right. So
All right,
the question I
I
asked.
can hear you.
All right. So
Yeah,
because of the network issues and all that, that's what happens when you're doing this online and your network is
yeah,
anyway.
we understood.
Technical difficulties. Let's chalk it up to that.
Yes.
So before the technical difficulty issues, I was asking, your 2 year journey so far as fatherhood, what has been the most difficult part?
Okay, so I said that it has been communicating with the child, uh, because the communication is almost exclusively one-sided, right?
Mm.
The child cannot talk, but they are trying to communicate in their own way. Um, so it takes a lot of guessing to understand what the child is trying to say. And on my own part, there are things that you may want the child to do or understand, but you're talking using words that the child basically does not understand. They don't understand the words yet. They don't understand the syntax of the language yet. And we speak multiple languages, so it's a bit confusing. The child might, understand English words, then you try to say the same thing in a different language, and it's a bit confusing. So I think the communication between the parent and the child, for me personally, that has been the difficult part. Everything else has been, just the normal things you would expect.
Well, I would
You
have I would have assumed that the waking
would
up and
sleep
crying
less.
at night would have been the difficult part.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm saying, you would sleep less. You would sleep less. But for me, I consider that as it's not something that threw me off.
Okay.
You understand? It's not something that threw me off. It's not something that I didn't expect. I knew that, oh yeah, the child has been in somewhat perpetual darkness for 9 months, and then is suddenly out in the bright world, and you expect the child to conform to the time that we are familiar with, morning to night and so on. They don't have that concept of morning and night. You
Yeah, yeah.
understand? So I think knowing this from an intellectual perspective made it easy for me to adjust in reality. So it wasn't a battle.
Oh, okay.
The
So,
real thing, the real practical ongoing challenge is the inability to communicate back and forth, you know. But then she quickly learned how to say what she wants without talking by, showing you, holding your hand, taking you to the kitchen and pointing to the beverage that she wants for a particular time. She doesn't want a particular. She doesn't want one beverage all the time, but different beverages, different things at different times. So, um, that's one way to communicate, and that developed even before 6 months. So that was quite helpful. She could not walk, she could crawl, but she would hold your hand and crawl to wherever she wants. She can hold your hand and crawl to the TTV remote or vice versa, and things like that. It's around communication. That's the main challenge for me.
like the last question.
Obviously, I'm not the mom, so as far as the night thing is concerned, waking up at night, I would suffer it less than the mom. So
Yeah,
it might be the case that for mothers, it is more difficult. That's one thing they would point to.
yeah. I'm going to have a mother conversation very soon, so
Okay,
I'll get her own take on the conversation. So, what
okay.
last question? What do you think about fatherhood and vulnerability towards your children? Like, how vulnerable do you want to be around your children? How vulnerable do you want them to see you?
I think that in the earlier stages, I don't see a lot of room for that vulnerability. I mean, if the child has an injury, you have to be the calming presence take care of to take care of the injury and not be the hysterical one. Even if it's something that you are scared of, something that you are, it doesn't help to show that fear at that point because the child will pick up on that fear and you know would not have the best reaction to the situation. So, as a father, you should be that calming presence. However, down the line, when the child gets to understand that nobody is infallible, you
Mm.
can communicate to the child that you, as a dad, you are also not infallible, and there are situations where you have weaknesses. That doesn't mean you'll be a weak. You use every opportunity to cry because you want to show vulnerability. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Yes. So you still be that pillar of support that they need.
Yeah.
Yes. At the same time, sometimes situations will arise where you have to, where you may, show a more vulnerable side. But then it should never replace being that supporting pillar, that calming presence, and that they can always count on.
Uh, on that note, I think that's a good way to end the conversation so far. I'm pretty sure we'll
All
have
right, boss.
a series of this conversation down the line, but it's been fun
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
for,
yeah.
for the
It's
first
nice. I mean, yeah.
yeah, I think for the first one it's been good. Like I still have a bunch of questions I'd like to ask, but not to make this too long, so it's difficult for people listening to it. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we'll explore different areas. There are a lot of questions on asked
All
and
right.
questions unanswered. So thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Yeah, thank you too, and I must commend you for what you are doing. I think the existing structures in society that are supposed to teach people these things might not really be doing the very best of jobs, or I would imagine that they try their best, but then it's not possible. Like the religious institutions, churches, and so on, schools, and society in general, teaching people parenting. Once you institutionalize something, you tend towards orthodoxy, right? So you'd expect it's likely that the church is more likely to have a formula and expect everybody to adopt the formula. Teach your child to speak tongues as early as possible, and everything will be fine. That sort of scenario. It's not. It helps that people like you would create platforms like this for decentralized knowledge sharing, let me put it that way, from different people at different times, and not just a top-down orthodox way of doing the parenting thing. So this is basically us learning as we converse with each other, and I'll listen to all your episodes and learn from other parents that you're going to bring on board as well.
All right, man. Thank you very much. Looking forward to having you some other time.
Thank you, man.
Lovely.
Thanks. Yeah.